Captain Janeway in the enormously popular television series Star Trek Voyager. Welcome back to our stage. Happy Valentine's Day. Just a few days late. Was it a romantic time for you?
I must say, I had a divine evening.
Did you really?
And how was yours?
It couldn't have been better, thank you.
Did you send a multitude of flowers?
Yes,
to
I did.
a very lucky lady?
Yes, I did.
Mine was not only romantic, but mysterious.
Really? Would you care to share just a few details with us before we start?
I will.
Okay.
I was told to be dressed up and ready by 6:30 promptly, which time I was picked up by my inamorata, who took me back to his house.
My which?
My inamorata.
That's I use the term companion. I like it. Could I borrow that, the inamorata?
You may not only borrow, you may have it.
Thanks, I'll take it.
Speaking of testosterone.
Yeah.
So back we went to his house, and I thought, well, this is all right. It's acceptable. Let's see, we're going to have a little champagne. And he's a guy, that's right. We walked in. Table is beautifully laid. 5 minutes later, a woman arrived. She said nothing. She finished setting the table. She cooked us a 3-course Italian meal, which was absolutely glorious.
Oh,
he poured an exquisite bottle of champagne. There were red roses on the table.
Oh, wonderful.
And at my place was, in fact, this locket.
Oh, the little bauble.
Which is Victorian.
Oh, how wonderful.
Terribly beautiful.
Yeah.
So it was superb.
And then?
And then? And then?
Dessert?
Dessert. You guys, yes.
Yeah, speaking of guys, now you have got 2 sons. The last time we talked, they were 10 and 11. Have they? They're probably
Have they stayed exactly the same age? No, Tom, because testosterone is at work. They are now 11 and 12, and their mother is ready to slip into a coma.
Why? I guess it's difficult as puberty approaches, and as Art Linkletter called the male hormone, testosterone takes over these young bodies. It becomes a tough go.
I am allegedly a woman,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So I'm looking at these creatures, and I haven't a clue as to what... Something's exploding constantly. I mean, from 1 minute to the next, the change can be diabolical. From joy to rage to sadness to steadiness. I don't understand it.
And what kind, when I was that age, I was always asking my mom and my dad. Now, you're a single mom, but I would always ask them questions about girls and guys and stuff like that.
We talk.
And they would try to answer as best they could. Although in the 50s, that kind of dialogue between parent and child was rare. What are your kids asking you about these days?
They're very straightforward.
Good.
Extremely frank.
So is their mom, by the way.
Most of the conversation is. Although I wonder at this point, a part of me is hesitant, and I don't want it to be. Part of me is hesitant because of taboo. I know that I have to be vigilant about taboo, and yet I really don't know what the parameters of taboo are. How far can a mother carry a conversation about sex with a 12-year-old boy who, first of all, has never had it, who's watching all of this stuff on television? He's being fed from sources that are not real.
Right.
Is this not true?
Right, and it's the topic of conversation in the schoolyard, the classroom,
all
the telephone. All the time.
But his body is giving him a real message, which is things are growing and developing and changing.
And let's go.
And let's go. But he appeals to me for a knowledge that I'm not sure I can give him because I am his mother.
Yeah, but that's precisely the reason why you have to give him some information.
Well, I can give him the basics, but I can't tell him. I think what a young man really wants to know is what's it going to feel like? What's it going to be like? How's she going to react? Am I going to be a slob, a jerk, a hero,
By the way, all those things the first time. A
Truly?
slob, a jerk, and a hero, yeah.
I sort of thought that's the way it was.
I mean, when you think back to your own, and I'm not looking for you to...
I've never had sex.
I knew there was a reason. You talked so quickly.
That's why you invite me back here so often. Never had it.
But if you think back, we were
it's different
all...
for a girl.
I know that. But for guys, we're buffoons, we're idiots, we're slobs, and we're wonderful. At least
something takes over the male, doesn't it? Something incredible happens to the male. It does not happen to the female. The female is praying to the Virgin Mary. Trust me, every second of the way. But I think the male is saying, Virgin Mary.
We don't even think of her at that point. She's in church.
You lose all religion at that point.
We lose all religion. Yes. There is a moment in maledom when there is absolutely no conscience operating whatsoever. Absolutely no consequence whatsoever.
When is that moment? When is that moment not existing in the male life?
Afterwards.
Right. right.
So now, you being a female, there would be nothing in your experience with your own parents, your mother or your father, to help you with the mothering of these two young men, these two boys.
Oh, of course there is. Oh, come on. I had, you know, significant and steady enough parenting to allow me to be skilled enough. But I'm talking to you about the mystery between a mother and her pubescent son, which I don't think is often discussed. Every mother on the block says, I can handle my kid, he's 12, he's boom. I know. I don't know. I don't know. So when we have these conversations, which we do daily at dinner, because you know I'm a great proponent of dinner.
Yes, I know.
We sit and I light the candles and I try to, and I think, oh, this is going to be lovely. They're going to eat my spaghetti and I'm going to drink wine and it's going to be, and then it starts. Hey, Mom, you know, and the voice goes down. There was this girl today and I wanted to, what is that expression they use in the schoolyard? Do any of you guys know it when...
Well, these guys wouldn't know schoolyard. We're all a little beyond schoolyard.
They're all sitting there. Look, this is the male face. Yeah, what's she going to say? You know.
What is it they say?
He has an urge to do something physical to a girl, but it's aggressive. It's violent. I say it's sex, right? He wants to pull down her pants, or he wants to knock her on the back. He wants to do something. He's instantly charged by anything she says that could be considered even remotely negative, like, you pig, or you suck, or whatever they talk about.
Right.
So I was called, you know, I hope my children aren't watching this program. I doubt it. And indeed, this altercation took place in the school.
Would there be any kind of information, just to help you over the hill for tomorrow night's dinner when you light the candles, is there any question that's on the table right now that's especially pressing that I, as a guy, could give you an answer to for these kids?
You could help me, and I'm serious about this. The emotional. Do you think it's possible? Is this a ridiculous analogy that perhaps it's like an injection for a woman, a huge injection of hormones, that from the morning at 8 o'clock to the afternoon at 4, this kid can change so wildly, emotionally. That's the difficult thing. I don't...
And you think you didn't when you were that age? In different ways, to be sure. But I had a daughter 12 years old, and then with 12 and 13, she ran the gamut between high and low, up and down, happy, sad, laughing, crying. 24 hours a day, it went back and forth.
I hear this is true of daughters. Even more true of you.
But you know what's interesting to me is, you know, they talk about the bond between husband and wife, the bond between father and daughter, the bond between grandparent and grandchild, but the strongest bond of all, the one that you can never, ever, ever get in the way of, is that between mother and son, from cradle to grave.
I love you, my sons. Yes.
True?
I think it's true. It's deep. It's very, very deep.
Anyway, let's go back to your own childhood here. And it's come to an end, and you're leaving Dubuque, and here come the feet again.
We always go back to my childhood. Yes.
And you're leaving to go to New York. And as we talked the last time, you lived at the Barbizon Hotel.
Yes, but only very
I know, but you were looking to become an actress in New York and become the queen of Broadway. But in the meantime, you must have had to do something to keep yourself going.
I worked.
Yeah.
I labored.
Oh.
My daily life is so rigorous, you wouldn't believe it. I did. I worked in every bar and restaurant, Upper East Side. Friar Tuck's Inn. I got fired from the Friar Tuck's Inn. I dumped a plate of spaghetti in a guy's lap. I really wasn't in the mood to hear it that day. I was a cocktail waitress at night, waited tables during the day, ran to school, was in a 5-floor walk-up. It was hard.
Yeah, tough. Did you go to school at all in New York?
Tom, my father may be watching. Of course I went to school. You know I went to New York University.
Why are you giving me the old wink?
Because
there's more to
I'm having that spasm problem. I haven't heard. Come on, your program. I went to New York University.
Anyway, we'll probe more deeply into this mystery of school in New York.
Okay.
NYU, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
For years and years and years on end.
Yes.
Kate Mulgrew is the guest. The program is Star Trek Voyager. There's an episode coming up which has an incredible dialogue about mortality versus immortality.
That's right.
We will talk about her schooling and then on to immortality here on the Highway of Life. You know the segment we're going to do next week when we do the world's... do you have cats at home?
No cats.
Oh, because okay. We don't have the world's self-cleaning dog box. We have a cat. But we'll do earthquake update with our friend from Caltech. It'd be great, huh? Yes, Tom. Now these messages. with Kate Mulgrew. So what was your degree in from NYU?
And you call yourself, however lapsed, a Roman Catholic. I defected, and I admit to it now. But I could not then say this to my father, who felt that he was subsidizing my education.
And the tuition checks kept arriving at the manse, huh?
Daddy, forgive me. I can't actually remember when I quit. I think I quit at the end of my sophomore year, but it could have been at the end of my junior. It's all a blur. In my hot focused drive to become an actress. I don't remember very much, except that I forgot to tell him that I had left school. So he found out years later.
Why did you want to be an actress? What was it that did something happen to you in Dubuque that you said, you know,
Yes.
this is what I want to do?
Have you been to Dubuque?
No, as a matter of fact, I was once. My dad was a traveling salesman, and in summertime, you know, he'd make these trips to sell stuff, and he would take me or my brother every now and again for a trip, and we spent one night in Dubuque, Iowa.
And what are your memories? What are your memories, Tom? Tell me now. Why? Get this man something to drink. I went to a Catholic school. Of course, there's nothing else in Dubuque, Iowa, called Resurrection, which was dotted with nuns of the Presentation Order, as I recall, which is quite an extraordinary habit. And they were rather dour ladies. Most of them were probably farmers' daughters. Very serious, very simple. I'm sure very lovely of heart, but hard to crack. No laughs, no jokes, and not a lot of soul going on. Except for my 5th grade teacher, Sister Benedict, who said to me, "You write wonderful poetry. I encourage you to write. I think you have the gift." I said, "Well, I'm not so sure I've got the gift for poetry. I'm a little florid. It's a little over the top." She said, "Well, why don't we find out? Read some of your poetry.
Recite your poetry.
Do the school. All the nuns and all the kids." So I went home and I said to my mother, "God, you're not going to believe it. Sister Benedict," she said, "you're not reading your own poetry. It's so horrible. Read The White Cliffs by Alice Duer Miller. It's a killer love poem, right? About the First World War," which I did. And I remember I finished it. And of course, I was quite nervous. This long poem. And I looked down and I saw an entire row of nuns in tears. I said, "That's it. This is for me."
Make a nun cry.
I mean, that's quite a moment.
Make
Yes.
a nun cry. You got it made, huh?
That's right.
Yep.
That's it. On my tombstone.
She made the nuns cry. All right, now let's get to this episode here, which is coming up.
Talk about Death Wish after this. Tell the people what we talk
tell them
about
what we
when
would-
we're not on the air.
No, you tell them.
Computerized kitty litters, right? That's 3 hours. And now we just talked for 2 hours about sex and how men love sex.
And how often we think about
And
it.
I think about sex every second.
And what did we say about how often women think about sex? How often do you think about sex?
Well, I really do. I mean, it depends on your circumstances, doesn't it? How often do I consciously think about sex? Maybe once a day,
Really?
maybe twice.
No kidding.
Oops, traveling. But I certainly don't think about it as much as I think any male counterpart.
Every second of every day. What women don't understand, you know how, like...
Are you thinking about sex when you're thinking about the kitty litter? That's the question.
it's in the same general area, isn't it?
It's,
One is very close, right? You know, like you probably have Valentine's night. You had a wonderful meal with your inamorato, and you were satisfied. You didn't wish any more food or drink at the end of the meal, right?
no, it's not.
Okay. But I'll bet the next evening at dinner time, you were as hungry for that meal as you were for the one that had taken place the night before. You see, you have any idea where I'm going with this?
I think I do, Tom.
Okay.
I think everybody in this room will probably. But please go.
So you see, to a guy, like you can have the greatest sexual experience of your life on a Monday, and by Tuesday,
You're bereft.
exactly, you got it. Can you understand that at all?
I can understand it.
But you're not bereft, are you?
No, we are not.
Well, why is that?
I would say even slightly depressed.
Anyway, on to Larry now in Hollywood, California, and I hope we get to this episode of immortality versus
I hope
mortality.
so, too.
Because you're killing me off here tonight. Here's Larry in Hollywood, California. Hi, Larry. Welcome to the show.
Good evening, Tom. Good evening, Kate.
Good evening.
Kate, I was a big fan of Ryan's Hope for 15 years from start to finish, and you were the best thing in it.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me?
I said thank you very much.
You're very welcome. What was the most difficult thing about doing a soap opera day after day, and when did you know it was time to leave?
Bothering me again. I was only on that soap opera very briefly. Everybody thinks I was on for a long time, but it was actually only a year and a half, maybe 2. And there was nothing difficult about it. I found it to be quite easy work. In fact, if I were to say anything about it, not challenging enough.
Really?
But this soap opera, Ryan's Hope, was written and created and produced by my dear friend Claire Labine, and I think it stood alone in its original flavor. I think in its message and its writing, everything about it was superior. So I was extremely fortunate to have had that experience.
Can I ask you a question, Larry?
Sure.
Since this program will not be seen in the Los Angeles area for 3 more hours, how come you're calling us now?
The things I do to speak to Kate Mulgrew.
Ah, how nice.
It's a very good answer.
Can I ask one quick question about Trek since it hadn't come up yet?
Sure.
Sure.
Besides the episode airing on Monday, which episode would you pick as the example of your best work?
Resistance, which aired earlier in the season. With Joel Grey.
Yes.
And directed by Rick Colby. I think that exemplified probably the best possible Janeway to date.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Have a nice evening. Watch the show later and see yourself, okay?
I can't wait.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Now, let's get to this. The dialogue as it takes place in this episode, mortality versus immortality, and the argument that has gone on through the centuries amongst men and women of intellect and not as to whether mortality is better than...
Yeah, but you know that this is a real Q classic problem, I suspect. He is omnipotent, this character called Q.
Q, right.
Splendidly played by John Delancey, who is one of my best friends. So you can imagine what a gift this was. The dilemma in this show was there is an, for lack of a better word, I'll say an alternate Q, a second Q.
Okay.
Who presents himself to
A
me.
pseudo Q.
No, another Q.
An alternate Q.
A real Q.
A real Q.
So we've got Q1, John Delancey, Q2, also beautifully played by Garrett Graham, and we have Captain Janeway and the rest of my crew. And the 2 Qs appear, and Q number 2, played by Garrett Graham, says, my problem is I don't want to be immortal. I want to be mortalized so that I may commit suicide. And I want you to have a hearing on the ship to decide whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. So that is the episode. Whether we should allow him to go back to the continuum, into an incarceration, which is what he considers immortality to be, or by allowing him to live. I know that what I'm really doing is, I suppose, advocating his own suicide. It's a real dilemma for Janeway.
Compelling television on the air this coming Monday night.
It is. It's great.
Has there been any, we've spent this whole evening talking about matters sexual. Has there been any sexual frivolity on the starship?
Not a lot. And we're going to talk about sex in space now, aren't we?
No, we aren't.
You came up to me earlier. You said, did you...
Well, I remarked to you that I'd once...
I think it's a fascinating idea. What do you think?
I think it'd be wonderful, just considering, the loss of gravity and all that implies. It allows the imagination to go...
Come back here and tell me.
On that note, young lady, I think the world of you, and I love having you, and I hope that you'll come back and visit us often. And with your son...